Welcome, my name is Andreas Patikis and I'm the founder of the Grey Cotswolds, where we offer unique courses and retreats around stress and well-being, anger management, parenting and sports performance for a healthier mind and body. Our venues are set in the beautiful and relaxing Cotswolds countryside with luxurious private dining and facilities. Our specialist team have vast knowledge and experience with beneficial therapies and advice, all in one place, to help with any challenges and empower you for life. Discover a new way of living through our podcasts and prepare to enter a world that is not black and white. Let us accept the colours in between. Welcome to the Grey Cotswolds. Hi everyone, today I'm joined by Hannah and we're going to look how EMDR can release you from dysfunctional core beliefs. So before we jump into that, do you want to tell us who you are and what you do, Hannah?
Yeah, so my name's Hannah Byrne. I run Sapling CBT and I offer face-to-face and online therapy for children and young people up to age 24. I offer CBT within that age group, but I offer EMDR for children, young people and adults.
Okay, and what are you hoping to bring to the Grey?
I think what I'd hope to bring is a bit of an understanding about how therapy can be useful, how it could be a very good additional tool for someone who's experiencing stress, burnout, anxiety, depression. I think to also normalise therapy and mental health and finally to kind of inspire some hope that people can and do get better.
Yeah, and there's definitely a need for that at this time more than ever. And how do you help people?
So the two types of therapy that I offer are cognitive behavioural therapy, which is traditionally a talk therapy, which is based on the concept that thoughts, feelings, physical sensations, and actions are all kind of interconnected. And that sometimes it's our negative thoughts, unhelpful core beliefs, and our emotions that kind of keep us feeling like we're trapped in a vicious cycle. So we work together to kind of unpick in different situations, what are you thinking, feeling, what shows up in your body, and what does that make you do? And we kind of break them down into these smaller parts and see where there's perhaps the possibility to make change. So that's kind of CBT. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. This is a type of therapy that's not so much focused on talking. It's focused on helping your brain do what it does naturally. So we help people recover from kind of past events that are perhaps triggering current difficulties. So as we sleep, we do something called REM sleep, which is basically where our eyes are moving left to right and processing what's happened during the day. This left to right movement, this bilateral movement, is stimulating the memory networks in the brain. So that's what your brain does naturally. When you go to sleep, you just deal with stuff from the day and from the past. Lovely. Sometimes when we experience something that we feel is traumatic, and that can be something that's like a big T, like a road traffic accident, or a small T, something like being bullied or experiencing quite harsh parenting, something like that. We don't necessarily process our memories properly because they were too overwhelming or too pervasive. So the brain doesn't really process them. And what it does, it kind of like chucks them to the back of your brain and it logs it along with thoughts, physical sensations, images, and it just kind of gets chucked to the back of your brain. So the REM sleep normally would deal with that. If that hasn't happened, for whatever reason, EMDR will replicate what happens in REM sleep, but within the room. So we get somebody to think back over past traumatic experiences and to bring them to mind whilst we do kind of eye movements. This me getting them to move their eyes from left to right whilst recalling the memory. And we're just getting the brain to bring forward that memory along with the physical sensations, thoughts, images, process it and put it back into the brain where it kind of should be. So it kind of like tidies up those memories so they feel processed, something that happened in the past that no longer causes us emotional distress.
And I suppose for people who haven't heard of EMDR or it's fairly new to them, I've done some reading on it. I find it fascinating, really. I'm really interested in the subject, and it's not been around as long as CBT. And but is it around the 80s? I think it's come into play, has it?
Yes, there's a lady called I have to apologize if I say her name wrong, but it's Francine Shapiro. Hopefully I've got that right. So she developed, well, she, I suppose, discovered EMDR. She says when she was walking through a park and she was distressed by some things that had happened in her past, and she was thinking them over and feeling quite emotional. And her eyes were kind of, she noticed her eyes were naturally moving around as she was thinking about it. So she took some action to kind of purposefully walk and move her eyes whilst recalling these memories. And she noticed that her emotional distress come down. And it was at that point that she thought, okay, let's do a bit of research into this. But yeah, that's the 1980s. So there's a good evidence base for EMDR, but I suppose it's relatively new in the scheme of things like CBT, which is the 60s, or psychotherapy, which obviously goes back a really long time. So it is new, but it's a fantastic therapy.
Well, the things I've read, the success stories in different types of trauma, anything from very maybe traumatic to, should we say, more day-to-day events that would still cause some trauma. But I've heard of its success. And I suppose there's the element of CBT where it's more known and you can be referred maybe easier to it than EMDR. But then there's also the difficulties maybe with CBT where it takes someone to communicate with you. And whereas maybe with this, is there a difference with it? Does it sort of suit someone different as well in that trauma?
Definitely. Aspect? So there's, I suppose, the two kind of groups that spring to mind. There are those people that can't, for whatever reason, articulate what they've experienced. And that can sometimes be, so for children and young people, EMDR is very helpful because it doesn't require them to talk back over everything, when perhaps the things that happened to them happened at times in life where they don't actually have very good language development, so they can't put the words to it. So there's I suppose that kind of group of people who can't, and then there's those that don't. So if someone's experienced some kind of abuse, they may actually not want to go over with somebody else what happened, and that can be for various reasons, but one of them can be for feelings of kind of shame and guilt, and they don't necessarily want to actually recall those very, very intricate personal details over what happened during that situation. And so EMDR, you get them to bring the memory to mind, but it's almost like they give you the highlights of what happened. They might say, I was in my car with my child, and you would say, okay, go with that. But you don't necessarily need to know all of the details around perhaps the car accident that happened. They need to think it through. They need to be prepared and willing to think about it, but they don't necessarily have to put that into words to explain to you. They can if they like, but if they don't feel able, then they don't have to.
And I suppose that opens a door up to people actually trying it, because from the outside, someone who's maybe hearing it for the first time, eyes, movement, lights, it sounds all a bit crazy, but effective.
Really effective. And I've seen it, and I'll be honest with you, it sometimes surprises me. So, I'll do a session with somebody and feels really stuck, and they're not necessarily feeling like they want to say too much. And as my longer standing background CBT, I want to interfere, I want to talk, I want to know what they're thinking, they're feeling. I have to hold myself back, trust in the process. And then you see people, sometimes it takes a few sessions, but sometimes it's one session, so like a 90-minute session. And by the end of it, you just see this huge amount of relief. They've experienced it, they've brought it to mind, they've processed it, they desensitized, they're not getting the physical sensations, they're able to talk about it without any real emotion or physical sensations. So you just know that they've moved on. So I've seen it in the room. It does sound bizarre. And I think people can sometimes feel they need to know almost too much about it and what it is, and what you have to almost just trust in the process, give it a go, have a few sessions. If you find it helpful, amazing. And if you don't, then you don't. But, it's one of these things that I think you've really got to try it to understand the impact it can have. And that's the same for us as therapists. So as part of our training, we have to actually both give and receive EMDR so that you can truly understand what it feels like when you do it.
How would you describe it felt like?
I think it can be quite surprising, the other stuff it brings up. So what I noticed was that I wanted to work on one event that had happened when I was, I think at the time, maybe 8. So it's something that happened when I was around 8. And I was thinking about this core memory, but my brain went off to thinking about lots of other things that had happened at different times, but they were somehow linked or associated. They had a theme that was similar, or they had a person in connection. And so what happens in EMDR is you might focus on one core memory, but other memories will come filtering through. And I think that really surprised me, because I was a little bit skeptical on the training. I mean, I'd put myself forward for the training, I funded myself. So I was already, really committed, but there was a little bit of me that's like, I can't see how this would work. So I was really shocked, and I found myself getting really emotional. And I'm someone who thinks, I'm pretty together, particularly in a training situation, really emotional. But then I came through it, I processed it, and I felt so much better. And I now know that I can think about that thing. And I know that because I'm able to say it to you now, even though I'm not giving you the details. And it's like, yeah, that happened when I was 8. It's not that big a deal. I'm over it. It's not happening now. So yeah, it's really powerful.
My brain's going in different directions as to how it could really benefit people.
Yeah.
And I can see your belief and passion behind it as well. Couple of quick fire questions as we've come to the end. What's your favorite way to relax?
So normally I would say my dogs. So my dog would be my normal way to relax, because I love taking him for walks, my little poodle. But I've since brought a second dog into the family. So dogs at the moment are a bit of a stressful thing for me, although she is lovely. If you can see any movement, I can't lift her up because she is down here and I daren't wake her up. She's currently sleeping. So when she's sleeping, she's very relaxing, very soothing. When she's awake, not quite.
You got double trouble there.
Yeah.
And what is the one thing people can do to improve their lives today?
I know it kind of gets bandied around and it's a bit cheesy, but it's really, really important just to talk. And I think people need to look at their social networks a little bit more. And what I mean by that is, some of us have the luxury of having family and friends and community groups and things around us. For some people, they don't have that, or they don't feel like they do, or the people that are around them feel close. So look at other social networks, look at your community groups, online support, NHS, charities, of course, there's private therapy. So there's lots and lots of options, but talk, reach out, you're never alone.
Yeah. And as you say, it might be something that we've heard many times, but I think it's so important what you've said. It is really important and something we can all do. For me, it's been really interesting because I have an interest in EMDR. So it's been great listening to you and the explanation and the benefits of it. It's been great. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to bring to the Grey for us on our course. I'm really excited about that. And thank you for sharing and your time today.
No worries. Thank you.
So that's myself signing off. Till next time, your fellow traveller on life's journey. Thanks, Hannah.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any thoughts, feelings or reflections on today's podcast, please leave them on the comments section on our website or social media channels. You can find more episodes and information at www.thegreycotswolds.co.uk. This is Andreas Patikis, your fellow traveller on life's journey, signing off.